are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
All right, welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. This is your host, Koku. Glad to be broadcasting today on what is called Columbus Day. And I want to start the show off reading to you, because I couldn't find the audio at the time. I want to read to you what your president, Donald Trump, had to say in his Columbus Day address. It goes like this. 525 years ago, Christopher Columbus completed an ambitious and daring voyage across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas. The voyage was a remarkable and then unparalleled feat that helped launch the age of exploration and discovery. The permanent arrival of Europeans to the Americas was a transformative event that undeniably and fundamentally changed the course of human history and set the stage for the development of our great nation. Therefore, on Columbus Day, we honor the skilled navigator and man of faith whose courageous feat brought together continents that has inspired countless others to pursue their dreams and convictions, even in the face of extreme doubt and tremendous adversity. More than 5 centuries after his initial voyage, we remember the Admiral of the Ocean Sea for building the critical first link in the strong and enduring bond between the United States and Europe. While Isabella I and Ferdinand II of Spain sponsored his historic voyage, Columbus was a native of the city of Genoa in present-day Italy and represents the rich history of important Italian-American contributions to our great nation. There can be no doubt that the American culture, business, and civic life would all be much less vibrant in the absence of the Italian-American community. We also take this opportunity to reaffirm our close ties to Columbus's country of birth, Italy. Italy is a strong ally and a valued partner in promoting peace and promoting prosperity around the world. In commemoration of Christopher Columbus's historic voyage, the Congress, by joint resolution on April 30th, 1934, and modified in 1968 as amended, has requested the President proclaim the second Monday of October of each year as Columbus Day. Now, therefore, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim October 9th, 2017 as Columbus Day. I call upon the people of the United States to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies and activities. I also direct that the flag of the United States be displayed on all public buildings on the appointed day in honor of our diverse history and all who have contributed to shaping this nation. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 6th day of October in the year of our Lord 2017, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 242nd. Donald J. Trump. That was Trump the other day, giving his proclamation for today. Today's holiday. And Trump has come under some criticism. Unlike past or previous presidents, including Obama and Clinton, those presidents did, in fact, still point out the fact that Christopher Columbus was basically a rapist, a murderer, and ushered in the destruction of a society that had been thriving in the Americas way before he even got here. Trump instead decided to use kind words towards Columbus, towards his hometown of Italy, and to all Italian people in America. So we had intended today, the Bitter Medicine podcast, to do a show talking about and linking a guy like Christopher Columbus to modern-day gentrification. Now, there's a few things about Columbus a lot of people have raised over the past the past decade and a half, really. But I think it was always something that was coming up from time to time in history. About Columbus. Columbus is a fraud. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Columbus is a fraud and a psychopath, to be quite frank. For starters, Columbus didn't really discover anything. You can't discover something that has people already there, right? He discovered nothing. A lot of people try to say that he proved that the world wasn't flat. That's nonsense as well. Columbus didn't prove anything in that respect because maybe 1,000 years before that in Africa, we knew the world was round. Okay? Columbus did not come to Americas in the name of exploration. That's a huge lie that white supremacists like to tell. The fact of the matter is Columbus came looking for wealth in the name of Christianity. And in the name of Christianity, Columbus did a whole lot of other things too. Columbus also did not come in peace. As you probably know, Columbus came, he enslaved and he raped the natives in the Caribbean and the Bahamas where he first landed. The Arawaks were there, thriving communities, fishing, raising families, agriculture, playing sports. In fact, the games that we see today called soccer and basketball, it is my contention those games are kind of stolen from the idea of the games that the Arawaks used to play. The Arawaks played a game that, if you read the description of it, it's a cross between basketball and soccer. And they used that game, in fact, to settle disputes. So if this village had a dispute against that village, they played a game. The side that won the dispute, and everything was good. There was no bloodshed, there was no killing. That's a European import. Okay? So Columbus enslaved and raped the natives. Columbus even went so far as to sell 9-year-old children. By his own admission, he sold 9-year-old children into prostitution. He committed heinous acts that was, at that time, had never been seen before. It was so bad that he was eventually sent back to Spain in chains. But he blessed a lot of his people, a lot of his crew members, to go out and rape, murder, and terrorize the natives in the Bahamas and other places, locales in the Caribbean and even in America. One of his traveling companions was a man named Bartholomew de las Casas. And de las Casas wrote in a book, you could look this up too, he wrote in a book about Columbus, and he talked about the atrocities that he saw. And he wrote about how they were unparalleled to anything that he had ever seen or heard of. And in fact, in his writings, he described how it made him tremble to even recall the things that he saw. Columbus and those guys were terrorists, psychopaths, sociopaths. They were going in these places. The natives, the indigenous people, never saw weapons before. And they would touch these swords of Columbus and his men, and they would get cut because they just didn't know what it was. And Columbus saw this naivety, and he even remarked that these would make good servants. And this is where the transatlantic slavery then comes in later on. You see, indigenous people, brown people, black people, we have this thing about us, and it's in our DNA too, by the way. It's always been in us, where we're kind, we share. This warrior thing that you see going on in our communities now is a learned thing. We learned this from our oppressors, okay? We had our battles in Africa. The bloodshed wasn't like it was to become. We instead dealt with indentured servitude, where prisoners of war were made servants or slaves for a time period. You could read about it in the Bible, actually. You were a slave for a certain amount of time, and later on you were freed. You could work, and you could even marry the person who had you enslaved. You could marry their daughter. Okay, so the indigenous people were naive. Columbus saw this, and he saw an opportunity to prey upon these people. But white folks in America would have you believe that Columbus is a hero. And in fact, today on Twitter, I noticed, and I've noticed this in the past with social media, but today on Twitter, it just jumped out at me a lot. If you really want to see white supremacy come out, look up the hashtag Columbus Day, and you will see a number of people who are celebrating Columbus and celebrating Columbus bringing upon the downfall of indigenous people. There was one particular one today that really caught my eye, that got me going through a bunch of these things. Let me find this right now. In fact, I retweeted it today. I don't really like to give shine to these types of folks, but I thought I would. I think I'm going to just mention this one person, and I invite you guys to look her up and to give her that special black treatment if you can. On Twitter, her handle is @NotElizabeth88. And she said something very interesting in a meme that she posted. Trying to find it right now. She's also reposted several other tweets from other white supremacists. One of them says, "We came, we saw, we conquered. We came, we saw, we conquered. We are awesome. You're welcome, world." She also posted one, and this is the one that really caught my eye. I thought this was interesting. She said, "I would like to wish everyone a very happy Columbus Day, even the haters, losers, unconquered people." And she had a meme attached that says, "Dear conquered peoples, the history of humanity is one of constant conflict and competition for resources like land, food, water, and women. You whine about the fact that Europeans were and are better at this contest than any other race of men in the world. You losers want us to regret being better at conquest and exploration than you were. You want apologies and reparations from people who were stronger and smarter than you, people who unequivocally won. We aren't sorry, and we owe you nothing. Deal with it." Now, I thought that summed up the average white person's mentality succinctly. And it's shown in history. You see, I'm not going to get into the whole thing of them coming out of caves and all that, which is true. But when you come from nothing, from caves and whatnot, resources are everything for you. So, for example, when Columbus went to the Bahamas, he found that he saw some Arawaks with gold in their ears and nose and stuff like that, and he terrorized them into taking them to where they got it from, and it ended up they went to Haiti and Cuba to show him where they got this gold and stuff from. And when he saw the gold, it piqued his interest, because again, they come from a place where they don't have a lot of resources. And that's what his whole exploration was for, was to find resources, to find wealth for the king and the queen. So when you understand that mentality, and you understand that that's a defect in the European, that they always want to move into places that they deem as having resources that they can use. They will always do this. And I've heard several of my friends say this in the past, and I've seen this on in certain black focused groups on Facebook and whatnot, that black men make the black community so bad, white people have to come in and take it. I've heard friends say things like, well, if we used to keep up the community, if we used to keep up our community and keep it nice, these white folks won't come and take it. And I'm here to tell you and them that that is utter bullshit, and it's a complete lie. That's the oppressed person in you speaking. See, when you're oppressed, you begin to blame yourself for your oppression. And that's what a lot of us do. We tend to, start to point out what's wrong in us. It's like women who get sexually assaulted, and they start to say to themselves, "Oh, maybe I was too flirty, and my dress was too short, and my cleavage was too much." No. Your being abused in that situation was solely because of the guy who abused you. And it's the same thing with our oppression. Stop looking for the things wrong in you and thinking that that's the reason why I'm being treated the way I'm being treated. This is what a lot of you are doing in terms of bleaching your skin and all that stuff. You think it's because your darkness or whatever your skin color is, that must be the problem. You have to understand that this is a problem from them. It's their problem, but we suffer through it. So it's not about how we keep the community. It has nothing to do with those things. It's all about the old adage, now, I'm white and I say so. It's all about them deeming something that they want, and they will come in and destroy you to get it. So we've got to understand that this is not new. This has been going on for some time, and this is something that's a defect in their minds. And again, it comes from the fact that they come from nothing. So when you go through this Not Elizabeth 88 and her retweets, everything she retweets today is about, celebrating not just Columbus, because Columbus is just a personification of something else. She's celebrating conquest, and she's celebrating whiteness and European conquest, right? So some other retweets she has, one from Brian Carey saying, "Survival of the fittest. If my ancestors conquered your ancestors, it's because my ancestors were better. Don't at me. Hashtag Columbus Day." So you see where, and I could go further. Someone called the Office of Mike, who she retweets. "To all those upset about Columbus, you're more than welcome to find another country that will make you happy." Not Elizabeth also talks about textbooks are now filled with liberal propaganda, like tearing down statues. They're rewriting history because it's offensive. Sad. And I could go on and on and on, but the point I'm trying to get across to you is that this is in their DNA. And we have to stop making excuses for it. When Columbus reached San Salvador in the Bahamas, was it the case that the Arawaks didn't keep the neighborhood nice? The streets weren't clean? The houses didn't look good? What was it? Was drugs being sold on the corners? Did the men somehow destroy the community and Columbus and them said, you know what, let's go in and take this over? So stop making excuses for that behavior. That's a defect within them. I can't repeat that enough times. That is a defect within these people. And that defect persists today. Let me take a quick station ID break and I'll explain on the other end.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAC Radio.
Welcome back to today's podcast. I'm your host, Koku. And we started this podcast talking about your President Donald J. Trump's address for Columbus Day. And the fact that he spoke well and highly of Columbus, which I expect a white supremacist to do when it comes to a historic white supremacist. He didn't do what Obama and even Clinton did before, which was point out the fact that with Columbus brought all these diseases and oppression to the people that were here already when he came. Trump just bypassed all of that. He spoke well and highly of Italy, which is where Columbus was originally from, even though he was navigating on behalf of the King and Queen of Spain. And then I started to talk about the tweets that caught my eye on Twitter today, being that it's Columbus Day. And Columbus Day is a prime day for white supremacists to come out and to spew their vitriol and to boast about their conquest and their ancestors being better and all that over your ancestors, over our ancestors. But it ties into something that's going on today. You see, what Columbus and them did is something genetic. It's a defect mentally that persists genetically. Like I said in the first part of this podcast, when you come from a background of having very little to no resources, and you come upon a people who have resources so plentiful and have kindness so plentiful that they don't care to share resources with you. They just don't. And that aspect of the indigenous people persists in us today. We still have this kind of mentality. We would share the shirt off our backs. We would, white supremacist gets rolled into a hospital, shot up from some bullshit he was doing, and black folks will work diligently to save him. Me personally, I wouldn't. But I guess they say they took an oath, so they're going to say they're going to do everything in their power to save him, knowing full damn well, had it been a white supremacist who had been tasked with trying to save you, he or she might put up an act like they're trying their damn best, but I'm sure they're going to kill you one way or the other during the process. But when we talk about Columbus, that's really a way for us to talk about gentrification now. See, when Columbus and them went into the New World, into San Salvador and the Bahamas, and they conquered those kind indigenous people, it didn't matter about whether the people kept up the neighborhood nicely or what have you. All it mattered was their mindset was, and still is today, to move in and move out the people who are there. If they want it, they will take it. They will kill you for it. and they will displace the ones that they did not kill. We see that here now with gentrification. The difference with gentrification today is when Columbus and them hit the New World and did that to those indigenous people, the indigenous people were naive towards weaponry. We've become more savvy now since those 525 years. We've become more savvy now that we know what weapons are. We're not as naive as we were back then in the Caribbean or in Africa. We have a pretty good idea how to fight back if we're really tested enough. So you can't come in anymore raping and pillaging and all this kind of thing anymore. You have to do it through more sophisticated means. We became more savvy. They became more sophisticated. And one of the ways they become more sophisticated is the old propaganda machine. And they got a lot of you Negroes out here repeating the propaganda bullshit. It's you Negroes out here talking about, well, if we kept up the neighborhood, they wouldn't do it. Bullshit. Bullshit. If they want it bad enough, they'll send a police raid through the place and shoot up the place. They'll drop a bomb on you like they did in Greenburg, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street. So this is who they are, and as soon as we recognize that, it will help us to be able to plan a defense against this type of behavior. This has nothing to do with how you keep the area. Now, let me be clear. Should we strive for more black excellence in the way we live, in the way we are towards one another? Absolutely. We should keep our areas nicer. We should lessen the violence in our communities, especially considering we're under the attack of a dominating force. We don't have time, like I said in my last podcast, we don't have time to shoot our own selves in the foot while the enemy is shooting at us. So yes, we must practice black excellence, but please don't make it seem like because black excellence is not always adhered to where our communities are concerned, that's why, or we give it the excuse for white folks to move in and move us out. Because it's absolute nonsense. The fact of the matter is, even if our communities weren't looking good, and if these white folks had some type of benevolence, like some of you Negroes like to make it seem that they have, when they moved in, why couldn't they share the space, improve the conditions so that our children and our people can live better with them? But that's not what they do. They come in and they get your asses up out of there. So like in a place like Brooklyn, New York, for example, and a lot of other big cities where black folks are living close to the public transportation that gets them to Manhattan quickly and all this stuff, white folks are coming and claiming that up like crazy. They're coming and claiming that up like crazy. And the excuse will be that, well, the neighborhoods were suffering and all this kind of stuff. No. If the neighborhoods were suffering, then why did you come in it? When you push all these people, and I talked about this in a previous podcast, one of the real difficulties of this dominating force upon us, this system of white supremacy, which I really like to call white inferiority complex, is no matter how well you do as a black person, the truth of the matter is, you are still in the mix with black folks who are not about much. Remember the Chris Rock joke about... Remember Chris Rock has this joke about him living in a neighborhood where Jay-Z lived, Mary J. Blige lived. He said of himself, Chris Rock, he said, I'm like maybe top 10 all-time comedian. Jay-Z, probably the greatest rapper ever, greatest rapper alive. Mary J. Blige, at the time when he was saying it, the greatest R&B songstress, etc. Queen of R&B. He said Puffy lived not too far from them too. He said, you know who my neighbor is? A white guy named Phil. You know what Phil does? Phil is just a dentist. He's not the greatest dentist alive. He's just a dentist. So that goes to tell you that our most affluent people only get to move up and live amongst really average white people. So that means the rest of us who go and get college educated, who hold down respectable jobs, we're still in the quagmire, right? We're still in the mix with those in our society who aren't about much, who are not about black excellence at all, who are probably not even aware or not care about the system of white supremacy, being honest, who are oppressing their own people. We're still in the mix with them. So when you gentrify these areas, all you do is you force all of us, you herd all of us like cattle into these areas, and we have to now deal with all of the people that you didn't want to deal with. We have to deal with now, because that's how you're treating us. You're herding us into these situations. And at the end of the day, be it a liberal or conservative, it's just two wings of the same racist bird, two sides of the same racist coin. At the end of the day, in their minds, they are better than you, they're stronger than you, they're smarter than you are, they are winners and you are losers. And this is the thing that we got to take away from Christopher Columbus on this day. When Christopher Columbus died, or was approaching death, he had a lot of remorse. His remorse wasn't because he wiped out the indigenous people in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas in particular. Wasn't because he ushered in transatlantic slavery. It was because he still didn't find Asia, which is what he wanted to find initially in his search for more wealth on behalf of the King and Queen of Spain, on behalf of Europeans in general. So the pain and suffering he caused, he didn't care about that. He felt like he lost because he wasn't able to get that wealth. This is who you are dealing with today. Every white person you see around you is a descendant of a Christopher Columbus. Make no mistake about it. Not blood descendants, but a mindset descendant of Christopher Columbus. All of them hang their hats on the fact that their ancestors were able to oppress you and keep you down. And today you are losers who are complaining about it, who are seeking reparations from it. You need to get over it. Why don't they tell the Jews to get over it? Why don't they stop giving Jews reparations? They give some Jews reparations like last year sometime. Because at the end of the day, Jews still are white folks. And white folks will oppress some white folks too now. Let's not get it wrong. But after they spank their fellow white folks, they tend to make it up to them. They don't make it up to us, though. So the take-home message from today's broadcast, it's going to be a short broadcast today because I'm dealing with some technical difficulties, but the take-home message from today's broadcast is stop looking for the things inside of you to justify why you're being oppressed. The fact of the matter is the oppression is from a mindset of people who come from little, who come from having not much, and that's not a justification at all. But it is what it is, right? So when they get around resources and stuff like that, they want to take. That's who they've been. They will kill for some resources. They will kill and push you out of a place just for some resources, just to live closer to the train that takes them to work. Today, they might not kill you for that, but they'll damn well push you out for it. And in fact, they would kill you too. In some of these states where you see these killings of blacks and stuff, that's to scare you. That's to scare you and get you up out of that community. So please, I want to stop seeing people talk about how, if black people kept up their communities, white folks won't take it over. That's bullshit. It's a lie. You're fooling yourselves. You're lying to yourselves. And in fact, you're damaging yourselves and you're damaging all of us. Christopher Columbus didn't have any other reason but his own psychotic mindset to subjugate those indigenous people in the new world that he met. And he didn't make any excuses as to, well, they weren't keeping up the place, so, So why are you doing it? Before I go, I want to once again put this out there. I am looking for a conscious female co-host. I want someone who will find pertinent topics in the news related to the black community, related to black empowerment, who will come on. It's a remote gig. You could be at home. That's fine. I just need you to have a reliable internet connection so that when we engage via Skype or Google Hangouts or what have you, you're not cutting in and out. I would like someone who not only could just read, not only who finds the worthy news pieces and reads them off, but also can add some commentary. I would like to get a little bit more of a dialogue on the show, not just me talking all the time. And if you are out there and you're interested, it's a volunteer gig. If you're interested, make sure to email us at bitter.medicine.podcast@gmail.com. Also, guys, I encourage you guys to subscribe to us on YouTube. We need more subscriptions to do more things. Follow us on our social media. You could find us, just do a quick search on the Bitter Medicine Podcast, and you'll find all our social media. And we're still looking for bloggers for the Bitter Medicine blog site. That's at www.bittermedicineblogs.com. We need more bloggers. One of the things you will see in white society is they contribute to the news cycle heavy. Shows like TMZ and all that stuff, they were able to come up because people were willing to contribute. Okay? We got to get more people involved in social commentary and think tanks, and we at the Bitter Medicine Podcast, we're offering that via our blog site. Again, www.bittermedicineblogs.com. Make sure to sign up. Hit us an email at bitter.medicine.podcast@gmail.com. And let's talk about what we can do to get more Black-related or Black interest news pieces out there. Okay? Until next time, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.